Welcome everybody to our event. We're so happy to have so many people here. The room is full. I see a lot of friends here who I have not had a chance to say hello to, but I will hopefully a little later on. I wanted to thank, first of all, CEBRI and the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event with the Consulate General of Canada. We've had a great time working together on this over the last 3 weeks, and it's, I think, the biggest event that the Canadian Consulate General has hosted in Rio in the last 15 years. So,
but we are really very pleased with beginning this year with such an amazing guest. Mr. Manley has a wealth of experience, and I think the dialogue we'll have with Winston Fritsch, with all his background on very similar topics, will be very rewarding to all of us. Imagine a better way of starting this year, kicking off our work with Mr. Manley, the kind of expertise he can bring to the debate. I have to share with you something unfortunate. You've probably followed in the press what the precipitation of the appointments that Mr. Levy had in Washington. So the timeline was a bit, it was envisaged a little different from what it emerged. He was caught up by his commitments already in the World Bank in DC. Nevertheless, he was kind enough to record a message to all of us directly from DC, which he recorded last evening, where he is these days because of this appointment. So if I could ask the video to be presented. Thank you.
Bom dia a todos. É uma grande alegria poder dirigir essas palavras para o Primeiro-Ministro John Manley, assim como toda a audiência no CEBRI nesse momento dessa conferência. Eu acho que é uma oportunidade realmente extremamente valiosa de se trocar impressões, de se conhecer mais da experiência do Canadá. O Canadá é um país que tem enormes afinidades com o Brasil, não só pela sua extensão geográfica, mas também pelo seu povo, sua maneira de ver as coisas, um país que está sempre lutando pela paz, pela harmonia, tem uma união de povos cada vez maior, e também no lado econômico, onde a gente tem uma interação bastante intensa, não só pelo investimento direto no Canadá, do Canadá no Brasil, que é extremamente importante, mas também em inúmeras indústrias, particularmente na área de óleo e gás, em que tem se desenvolvido a presença canadense e a cooperação entre o Brasil e o Canadá. Então, acho que não poderia ter um começo de ano, uma conferência mais apropriada para o CEBRI promover no Rio de Janeiro nesse começo de ano. Em particular, o tema e a experiência do Canadá na questão fiscal, naquela consolidação, e mais que uma consolidação, na transformação fiscal do Canadá no final da década de 90, eu acho que é uma experiência muito interessante pelo Brasil. Primeiro, pela forma democrática que foi feita. Segundo, pela maneira organizada, com a revisão dos gastos sistemática entre os vários setores, dentro de um ambiente de discussão democrática. E terceiro, pela efetividade. Eu acredito que, ao se pôr as contas em ordens, foi um dos fatores que levaram a mais de 15 anos de desenvolvimento econômico, de estabilidade e realmente profundas transformações que se viu no Canadá desde o meados, final da década de 90. Eu acredito também que essa seja uma oportunidade muito interessante de se discutir outros aspectos, inclusive na parte de regulação financeira, que foi um outro fator para o sucesso do Canadá, inclusive ter enfrentado com tranquilidade a crise financeira de 2008, mesmo o seu principal mercado tendo entrado numa contração durante um certo período dos Estados Unidos, mas a fortaleza dos bancos do Canadá, assim como a gente sabe do bom desempenho do setor financeiro no Brasil, foi um fator muito importante nos últimos anos. Eu acredito que mais recentemente, inclusive agora com a volta do Partido Liberal ao poder, a discussão da resposta, a melhor resposta ao choque das commodities, a essa fase já decrescente dos preços das commodities, que também tem tido um impacto no Canadá. O Canadá, assim como o Brasil, é uma economia bastante diversificada, tem um setor de serviços importante, como eu mencionei, um setor industrial, mas certamente também tem repercussões à evolução mais recente dos preços das commodities. Então, eu mais uma vez, eu queria parabenizar em particular o Rafael Benck pela promoção desse evento, a Júlia, por botar tudo em ordem, inclusive me permitir, ainda que estando aqui em Washington, poder dar essas palavras e particularmente saudar, dar as boas-vindas ao ministro Manley no Rio de Janeiro, nesse começo de ano, momento tão importante, momento em que se fazem decisões estratégicas, o Brasil está aí discutindo diversos rumos, poder compartilhar essa experiência de sucesso que, como eu falei, teve implicações por vários anos.
Manley, I'm going to start our discussion before I hand it over to Mr. Fritsch and Rafael. I guess what we would like to hear from you first about is in the late 80s, early 90s, when your government came to office in 1993, what was Canada facing at that time in terms of not only, let's talk about politics and economics, but what were the big challenges at the time? What did you come into office facing? What was the biggest surprise for you as a new government, and how did you kind of deal with that on not only the financial front, but also on the political front?
Well, just very quickly to get this started, and then I think we can have some useful discussion, Sanjeev. I'd say first in terms of the economic picture that we had at that time, we were just coming out of quite a significant economic downturn in the early 90s, a recession that hit North America, but especially meaningfully in Canada, so that we found ourselves with quite high rate of unemployment, about 12%. Public finances were deteriorating, and so the challenges were real. We also faced a fiscal challenge in that for about 20 years, Canada had continuously been running fiscal deficits, not just at the federal level, but also at the provincial level. So that when you scanned our if you like, our peer group around the world, you found that our debt as a percentage of our GDP was highest in the G7, second only to Italy. We're always grateful for the Italians because they made us look a little bit more respectable. We were running an annual deficit at the federal level of in excess of 6% of GDP, which meant it had become a structural deficit. We were borrowing on an ongoing basis to cover the operating costs of the government. And one of the biggest operating costs that we had was the servicing of our debt, which was running at about 36% of our federal revenues. So that for the beleaguered taxpayers of Canada, for every dollar they gave us, they only got about 64 cents of services, because the rest was going just to service the interest on the debt. That earned us the distinction in the view of the Wall Street Journal in January 1995 of being qualified as an honorary member of the third world, as they put it. It wasn't good company to be in. We faced one day, I can't remember, it was early 95 or late 94, when a Government of Canada bond auction was going no bids with about 30 minutes to go, which meant we came very close to being unable to finance our ongoing indebtedness. And those were big challenges. Now, the politics of it were this, in a couple of words. We were elected essentially as a center-left government. after 9 years of what you might call a center-right government, that had spent a lot of time talking about the need to balance budgets and had never accomplished doing that. And so, you know, as you might say, just as Richard Nixon had to go to China, it took a center-left government to really challenge Canadians to do what we had to do and to face the reality that, that we were borrowing more than we could afford to do. And that set the stage for a number of measures. Minister Levy reflected a couple of them. Certainly we took drastic actions that you might call, in current terms, austerity actions. We also did spending in very targeted ways. We did privatizations, we deregulated aspects of the Canadian economy, and we benefited in no small measure from the newly enacted NAFTA trade agreement, which meant that growth in the U.S. economy was something that spilled over into Canada, gave us a period of growth, gave us declining interest rates, and put us on course to what you might call a virtuous cycle, where within about 5 years we had eliminated our federal deficit. Most of the provinces had eliminated theirs as well, and we were at the stage where our debt to GDP ratio was falling rather than rising. So that's some of the context. When we concluded the process, the reduction in federal government spending was the largest since Canadian Armed Forces demobilized after World War II. And you need to know, Canada's not known as a military country, but at the end of World War II, we had the 4th largest armed force in the world. So that demobilization was big. This was also big. My department, I was the industry minister at that time. As you say, Raphael, I lost half my budget. Half my budget. I had 54 programs of all kinds of support for different aspects of Canadian industry. We reduced those 54 to 11. We just eliminated programs. They didn't reduce by 12%. They were gone. They went from 100% to 0%. This actually turned out to be a very good exercise for our department, because after decades of doing good things, we were forced with less money to figure out what were the really important things for us to do. Because in public policy, as it is in business, as it is in life, very often the good is the enemy of the excellent. And if it's good, you do it. And how can you be critical of doing good? But if you don't have the money, you have to stop doing some good and only put the money into what's really excellent. And I think as a result of that, we had much more optimal outcomes in the performance of our government than would otherwise have been the case. But I'd underscore this. What was crucially important, you can't be a government that makes these decisions in isolation from the population. And we had to do a very good job of convincing the public that what we were doing, where we were cutting, was necessary, that we weren't exempting some in favor of others, that everybody was bearing a portion of the pain, and that we were doing it fairly. And I think the testament to the fact that we were successful at that is not just the fiscal outcomes, but the fact that in 1997, Mr. Chrétien's government was reelected to a second majority, having imposed these cuts, and in 2000, his government was elected to a third majority. So it wasn't easy. There were lots of bumps along the road. There was lots of criticism from all sorts of places, but by and large, the population supported what we were trying to do.
John said in his first intervention that it's very important to pin down in this tropicalization of the discussion, is that This process is painful, but it generates a virtual circle. That's what the word used, and it's absolutely right, of growth and more growth, basically because as you change the trajectory of the debt to GDP ratio, you begin allowing the government, the central bank, to lower interest rates because you increase the rating of the perception of the markets about the government as a borrower, as a debtor. And then this falling interest rates generates the virtual circle, which together with the signals that the private sector gets from the structural reforms, launches a long-term period of growth.
I lived in Canada 3 years, and my first day as an executive there came to me for approval donations for the parties in Ontario, which were starting a campaign, and this officer came to me with asking for each of the parties $10,000, and I asked this person to tell me what was the context and how it worked, and very simply this lady who was with INCO at that point already for 28 years, she said, well, we have our internal practice of supporting all the parties. There is a cap, it's $10,000, and we give this same cap to all the parties, exactly the same, because we foster the democratic process of these parties, and this is what will enable them to bring transparency to their program, and voters will be better able to choose what's best for Canada. So we are in the middle of a transformation in Brazil, when we have the Supreme Court deciding on private funding by corporations is not allowed anymore, and now this whole system is being rethought, and how the campaigns can be run. So maybe you can share a bit the rationale and how it works now in Canada, and I think this is enlightful for our purposes here.
So at the federal level, and there are still contributions permitted in some of the provinces, not all. At the federal level, corporations and trade unions are no longer allowed to contribute anything to political campaigns, and individuals are allowed to personally contribute a maximum of $1,100. So what would that be? 2,500 reais, roughly. So it's not a lot of money. And I think if you ask Canadians, to understand Canadians, you have to know that we have very mixed feelings about the United States. Close friend, close ally, major market, but most of the things we're proud of are things that distinguish us from the United States, okay?
We have the same thing with Brazil and Argentina.
So when you see the vast amounts of money that U.S. presidential candidates are raising and spending, it sends chills down our spines. And Canadian election campaigns are run on small contributions by many donors, something you couldn't really do without the internet, but now has become possible. The biggest corporations in Canada cannot give any money, directly or indirectly. There are no PACs like you have in the United States. And so the system has become, I'd say, a lot more democratic. It's not who has the most money is the party that is able to raise the most in small amounts. $5, $10, $50, are the average contributions. We give tax breaks for contributions to political parties, quite generous ones. So if I give $100 to a political party, I get $75 back. So it only costs me $25, and that margin decreases. But it's very much reaching out to smaller people. I'd say it has reduced the influence of business in politics. Sometimes I think that's a good thing. Sometimes I think it's not a good thing, because nobody can go to the chairman of INCO and say, you know, would you write us a check? And I can tell you in the past years at the federal level, they were bigger than $10,000. And with that, of course, it's not direct, but comes some influence. Well, we've cleaned that up, and I think it's a good thing.
So thank you again to Canada's friendship in coming and sharing this experience with us. Special compliments to the Canadian consulate here in Rio for its humane approach and to how it treats strategic discussions like this and grassroots projects that you have. I think the approach that the Canadian consulate has here is really a model and a state-of-the-art for what we want to see in the international community in all countries. So sincere congratulations to this fantastic approach that you take here. And I don't think it's an accident that Canada has the leadership in the leadership of Sanjeev, the role of Dean of the consulates here in Canada, in Rio. Congratulations. The water from experience we are happy to share with the lake in Toronto, now in the reform that you're doing. I don't know, part of it is frozen there some days of the year, but we're happy to share. And Mr. John Manley, Honorable John Manley, thank you so much for lending us a little bit of your vacation, coming here, sharing with us your thoughts, even if I can't imagine anything more interesting you could do than being here with us. So thank you very much.